What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. We're going to be recapping the entire UFC Vegas 96 fight card, everything that went down during the fights, how the fights went, how our picks went, and all of that stuff for the Cannonier and Borralho card. But before we get into that, I just want to touch base on something. I don't know what it is, but YouTube analysts, guys that break down these fights, they like to shit on Apex cards for some reason. I don't know if it's just the popular thing to do or what it is, but a lot of them like to hate on the fact that sometimes it seems like they're lazily put together, these cards, and it's just like a filler card for before and after pay-per-views, blah, 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 blah. I'm just one of those guys that enjoys watching fights regardless, and if you really boil it down, that card yesterday between the exciting 15-minute wars we watched, some of the emphatic finishes that we got, like UFC 305 didn't bring that much excitement in my opinion as this literal Apex Fight Night card did, and I could be on an island with that, but honestly, this is why I just like watching UFC in general, watching fights, because you never know, regardless of the level of skill of these fighters, sometimes you get an amazing finish, an amazing brawl that we all want to see and that we all expect from these pay-per-view cards, but sometimes it just takes a fight night to get that excitement. So I don't know why everybody hates on them. Regardless, it was a sick fight night card. Let's recap everything that went down. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and comment your thoughts on UFC Vegas 96 as a whole in the comment sections down below. First fight of the night, we had a UFC newcomer, Wang, going up against Victoria Leonardo, and this was one of those matchups that the UFC likes to do with these exciting up-and-comers. They give them a matchup that is winnable to get hype behind them and get their first UFC win. Now, I did expect Wang to be the better fighter and finish Leonardo. I'm pretty sure that's what I had mentioned in the breakdown, but I did not expect it to go the way that it did and so quickly. In the first minute of the fight, Wang dealt with the pressure of Leonardo very easily, and then a minute in, she lands a nice 1-2, a right cross down the pipe that landed flush on the chin of Leonardo and knocked her out stiff cold. Just froze up, fell to the ground, no follow-up shots needed. She was out cold, and to see that happen at 115 pounds, was it a flyweight fight? Regardless, to see this go down in a women's division at 125 pounds even is insane. I expected a finish on the Wang side, but I did not expect it to be just a stiff cold knockout. That's insane. It is at flyweight, so that's my mistake. I thought it was 115. Regardless, man, you hardly ever see knockouts like that in the women's divisions. So I'm really excited to see what's next for Wang. She's playing that villain role. Her nickname is the Joker. She's playing it well, coming to the weigh-ins with a Joker face paint on, doing the gun signs. She's like playing that role really well, and she even came out with a call-out after her first fight. She calls out Casey O'Neill, and I love when fighters do that because even though it might not come to fruition, they're taking control of their career, and typically the UFC, if it is doable, they'll try to get it done. Casey O'Neill just fought at UFC 305 last weekend. Their schedules are matched up, and why not? Why not? So I love that. I'm excited to see what's next for Wang. Fantastic way to start off this fight night card. Next up was a women's bantamweight fight. Josiane Nunes going up against Jacqueline Cavalcanti. Now, this was one of the weird judges scorecards of the night, and we're going to talk about a few of them throughout this card. So Jacqueline Cavalcanti wins a split decision where for me it just should have been a unanimous decision win for Cavalcanti. Yes, Josiane Nunes was pushing the pace. Yes, she was the aggressor in the fight, and she did land some decent shots, but I don't know how one judge saw it 30-27 for Josiane Nunes. That's insane. Like, I understand she's bringing the fight to Cavalcanti. I understand she's the one with the forward pressure, but she barely landed strikes in comparison to Cavalcanti. Cavalcanti, was piecing her up the entire time, and it's not like she wasn't landing big shots of her own. Josiane Nunes maybe didn't look like it affected her as much because Nunes, when she throws those big shots, it's those huge overhand looping left hooks, and when they land, it's going to it's going to look like it affects her opponent more than Cavalcanti's like straight down the pipe shots, which were landing heavily on Nunes, okay? And I don't see a world where a judge gave all 3 rounds to Nunes. That was insane to me. I'm happy that Cavalcanti won because that was the true winner of this fight, regardless of it being split. So even though there was some wild scorecards on this night, the rightful winners basically won every single time. So I'm happy to see that Jacqueline got the win. It's just easily noticeable that she is the much better, more technical fighter. Josiane Nunes just comes in trying to land that big left hook and doesn't really have much else to offer. So I'm happy Jacqueline won. See what's next for her in this division. We start off the night 2-2 so far. Kong Wang was a ridiculously sized favorite, so it's nothing crazy there. Cavalcanti was a decent favorite as well, but they both got it done. Next up was a middleweight fight. Jose Medina going up against Zachary Reese. Now, this was a fantastic showing for Zach Reese, and it's not because he got a finish, because he didn't. But it was an unknown to see what Zach Reese would look like over a 15-minute period, because all of his fights have ended in the first round. It's either him destroying people in under the 5 minutes, or obviously that freak slam KO that he suffered against Cody Brundage. But regardless, he's never been out of that 4-minute threshold, never mind out of that first round. But Jose Medina, being as tough as he is, and that's basically the only thing he brings to the table, Zach Reese was destroying his body with the kicks, was destroying the body, hurt him multiple times. He also landed some big shots to the head of Jose Medina. Medina really didn't mount any sort of offense other than maybe one takedown, I believe, in the first round. Medina's basically just a heavy bag. He's there to get punched. He's there to get beat up. He sits there and taunts and all that stuff, but it's like, dude, come on. You're getting your ass kicked. And like, it's just a bad look. Regardless, I don't even think Medina should be in the UFC. I don't know what he's doing here. Regardless, Zach Reese comes out. Couldn't get that finish in the first or the second. He couldn't get the finish at all, but he showed that he can stick around for the entire 15 minutes. He has enough cardio to make it through that 15 minutes. The thing that worries me, though, is he does seemingly slow down throughout the fight, and when he gets hit, he reacts a lot. So I don't know if that's because of the lack of cardio on the Zach Reese side. Regardless, it was nice to see him go through that adversity, because he's only seen the first round and he basically easily finishes opponents. And if anybody else was against him this weekend other than Medina, I think he gets another first round finish. Honestly, the shots that Medina was taking was absolutely ridiculous. Regardless, a nice win for Zachary Reese as well. We had him, but he again was a huge favorite. I think he finished as a minus 700 favorite before the fight. Regardless, Zach Reese gets it done. I'm a big fan of his, so I'm excited to see what's next for him. Next up, we had an absolute banger. Vyacheslav Borshchev went up against James Llontop. Now, I had James in this fight because I didn't think I could trust Borshchev's chin after getting knocked down by Chase Hooper. And this is why MMA is so funny. It's never 1 + 1 = 2. I shouldn't say never. Sometimes it is, but for the most part, it's hardly 1 + 1 = 2, because Borshchev gets knocked down by Hooper, but then he goes up against somebody like James Llontop, who was landing some decent shots that looked harder than the one that Hooper landed, and Borshchev was just eating them. He was just eating them, and it was incredible to see because of, like I said, his previous matchup. Now, this fight, I believe, was a split decision. I'm not entirely mad about that. I do think Borshchev won. The thing that was weird, though, is the 30-27. I don't know how you don't give James Llontop that third round, because he had the more volume. He landed some decent shots in that fight, in that third round as well, and he was pushing the pace. I scored that third round for James Llontop, but I don't think I could give him rounds 1 or 2. I think it should have just been a 29-28 win for Borshchev, but I just don't know how you give a 30-27 to Borshchev. Now, one of the judges had it 29-28 on the Llontop side, which I'm also not disappointed in, because arguably I believe that second and third round, the second round was much closer. I believe you give that first round to Borshchev. The third round, I'm just going to double check that I'm not mixing up these rounds. Judges scorecards UFC. Let's check this out. So, dun 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 dun. Okay, James Llontop, where is this guy? So I guess it was the first round so the first round one of the judges scored it for James Llontop. But yeah, I just don't know how you don't give the round 3 to I don't know how you don't give round 3 to James Llontop. Regardless, it was an absolute banger. Borshchev looked so slick, so fast on the feet. He was giving Llontop so many different looks, and we all know that that's his game. He's a striking coach, former Russian and world kickboxing champion, and that really was on display in this fight against Llontop. But yeah, good win for Borshchev. I don't understand MMA. I don't know how you get dropped by Chase Hooper and then eat all those shots from Llontop. Regardless, that was the first L of the night. We did have a few more. As I said in the beginning, we went 7-4. I don't even know if I mentioned that. Regardless, nice win for Slava Claus. Let's continue up the card. Dennis Buzukja went up against Francis Marshall, and yeah, here's another thing. This is just it's so weird, man. So weird. Buzukja goes out and breaks Connor Matthews in his last fight. Breaks him. He goes up against Francis Marshall, who is arguably around the same skill level as Connor Matthews. And Marshall's also taking this on extremely short notice. I think he took the fight on Monday or Tuesday. And not only that, this was up at lightweight. So I don't know if that helped the scenario and why Francis Marshall had a little bit more power in his hands. But Dennis Buzukja got held up against the cage for the entire first round, basically. Only broke apart maybe a minute after, with a minute left, and he didn't really mount much offense to sway the first round in his favor. Now, this is one of the things I wanted to talk about because two of the judges gave round 2 to Buzukja. And a lot of people hate on that because it's like, okay, Francis Marshall dropped Dennis Buzukja in that second round. But here's the thing. So where do we draw the line for how important a knockdown is? Of course, it's extremely important. But after that knockdown, Buzukja pieced up and was landing big shots on Marshall, like huge shots, and Marshall really couldn't find the chin of Buzukja for the rest of that second round. Buzukja had good head movement. He was slipping a lot of these punches and just bombing on Marshall afterwards with some nice counters and was piecing him up after that second round. So it's like, how much weight does that knockdown, so if no matter what, if somebody gets a knockdown, they just win that round unless their opponent knocks them down as well? Like, is that how it goes? Because I genuinely had a argument for Dennis Buzukja to win that second round as well, and two of the judges saw it the same way. So, and that third round was kind of close as well. I think that was Buzukja's best round. So that's another thing. This one judge had it 30-27 for Francis Marshall. I don't understand. Like, there needs to be there's already a criteria for how judges score fights, but clearly some of them aren't reading it, or some of them are just kind of winging it. I don't know if they know what they're looking at or what they're scoring and what is holding more weight towards deciding who wins every single round. But this is insane. It's insane that we have such a discrepancy in scorecards. Like, when the rounds are close, I'll understand. I get it. But it's like, dude, 30-27 for Francis Marshall is insane. I think you give Buzukja that third round. Two of the judges didn't even have it for... It's just insanity. So we have to really figure it out. I think the UFC needs to really sit down and talk to these judges, because some of these scorecards yesterday were insane. But I'm interested to see what you guys have to say about I'm interested to see what you guys have to say about that second round, because like I said, is it just an automatic L if you get knocked down and don't knock down your opponent afterwards? Because I thought Buzukja did a great job getting back to his feet and just started and landed on Marshall some big shots as well, and he was evading most of it. Marshall couldn't mount any other offense in that second round. So I'm just interested to hear what you guys have to say about it. Nevertheless, Buzukja was my pick. He ended up falling short. Francis Marshall probably saved his UFC career with this one. Came in on short notice, beat Buzukja, and it was a solid win for him. He looked good in that second round, man. Well, at the start of that second round. The first round was kind of annoying. You kind of just held him up against the cage for an entire 5 minutes. But let's keep rolling. Edmen Shahbazyan against Gerald Meerschaert. This one was extremely frustrating because Shahbazyan just pulls off classic Shahbazyan move, gasses out, and just gasses out and gets finished in typical Shahbazyan fashion. Edmen Shahbazyan looked fantastic on the feet in the first round. Was landing some good shots to the head, to the body of Meerschaert, and was looking great. In that second round, Shahbazyan, more of the same, comes in. He hurt Meerschaert with a body shot, and I will never understand why fighters do this. But you hurt somebody to the body, so when you get them when they drop to their back on the canvas, instead of going down and attacking their body, you're going for the head where they aren't hurt. So Meerschaert, Meerschaert was doing a great job, like kind of turtling up and covering. Exactly at the right moment, he would move and show that he's fighting back. So Mark Smith was, I don't know how close he was to stopping the fight, but Meerschaert did a great job to kind of weather a little bit and then move, try to stay active. Weather a little bit, move, try to stay active. So he did a great job doing that. I don't know if I'm being biased because I really needed Shahbazyan to win, but I think fights have been stopped for less, and it's just interesting to see the discrepancy between the refs' decisions as well. I know I like to shit on the judges and how there's not like a standard criteria, it seems like, but same thing for the refs. It's like, I get it's up to the refs' discretion, but the difference between some of these finishes and non-stoppages is insane. It's insane to me because the fights have been stopped for a lot less than what Shahbazyan was doing to Meerschaert, and it's just crazy to see. Regardless, Meerschaert weathered the storm, comes back, and he submits Shahbazyan, surpassing Anderson Silva as the UFC leader in middleweight finishes, I believe, which is insanity. You got Anderson Silva, arguably the middleweight GOAT, was number one. Now you got Meerschaert above him. Crazy. And that's the other thing. Those records are kind of weird in my opinion because it's like Anderson Silva was at the top for so long. So, like, is it more impressive for Meerschaert to be submitting these unranked, low-level dudes his whole career and then having the record for most finishes? Or is it more impressive for Anderson Silva, who was fighting the best of the best the entire time he was in the UFC? So, whatever. Regardless, congrats to GM3. Probably ruined a lot of parlays this weekend. Maybe cashed some GM3 sub tickets for people. And now he's the middleweight leading finisher. Good for him. Edmen Shahbazyan, lots of talent wasted on stupidity. Next up, welterweight fight, Neil Magny, Michael Morales. I believe this is the opening of the main card. Nope, it was the last fight. Regardless, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and drop your comments down below on what you thought in this event and how you did on your picks each fight. I'm excited to hear from you guys. Neil Magny up against Michael Morales. So Magny came in, kind of a similar game plan to Francis Marshall, held Morales up against the cage. Didn't really mount much offense. Morales was landing some nice. He checked a big leg kick, I believe, that hurt Magny kind of. Morales understood that Magny doesn't really check his own leg kicks or check leg kicks that are being thrown at him, so he kind of chewed up that a little bit. But ultimately, Magny couldn't do anything up against the clinch. Morales eventually, while he was fighting the hands, he found an opening and he did a spinning elbow out of the clinch, dropped Magny, and that was the beginning of the end for him. Morales, 17-0 now, 25 years old, looking better and better every single time he gets in that octagon. I am super excited to see what's next for him. I just want him to keep climbing up the rankings. He looks, even though he's so young, he looks like he's just so poised in there, so calm, patient, and he has high fight IQ, and I really like that from him. Big fan of Michael Morales. Huge win for him to beat a veteran like Magny, who just beat another up-and-coming prospect in Mike Malott last time. So Morales looked great. I'm happy for that one. We ended up getting that right, but again, a huge, sizable favorite. Let's keep moving. So this was the first of two Ultimate Fighter finale fights. Ofli went up against Myron Santos. Now, I picked Myron Santos in this fight And this was one of the nicest knockouts. Like, he put him out cold. Con Ofli fell to his knee. I'm getting ahead of myself. We had Myron Santos because my breakdown was, yes, Con Ofli has that pressure wrestling style. He is strong. He can get his opponents down to the ground and maul them. But Myron Santos throughout the Ultimate Fighter showed that even if he does get taken down, he has a good game. He has a good get-up game. He didn't really have to show it in this fight because he also has fantastic takedown defense. And he showed exactly that. This fight went basically how I broke it down. Myron Santos was way ahead on the feet. This kid is 24 years old, and his IQ, his striking ability on the feet is amazing. It's amazing to see. I'm really excited to see what's next for Myron. I'm happy that he won the finals and got that contract. And he was just basically fending off those takedowns, piecing up Con Ofli, and then in that second round, Con was kind of putting Santos up against the fence, which is smart because if you are the smaller fighter, you want to back up the longer, rangier striker up against the fence so you can kind of get a little bit closer. You're not whiffing at air trying to get to him. They have that resistance behind them, so they can't just dip out. And even though that was the right game plan, he got a little bit too wild. He threw a combo, and during both of them were throwing strikes. I'm pretty sure he was going in for a right regardless. Myron Santos landed a beautiful hook right to the chin of Ofli, and Ofli just shut off. Dropped to his knees, KO'd. Santos did follow up with some unnecessary shots, but you can't blame him. He's 24. He's fighting for a UFC contract, and it's not like Ofli fell over completely. The way he fell was like, if he fell to his knees, you would think that he's a little bit hurt and not really out cold, but this guy was asleep before he even hit the canvas. It was an absolutely disgusting knockout. That got me off my feet. Probably the best finish of the entire card. Huge win for the 24-year-old. That was amazing to watch. I'm happy for him. We had Myron Santos in this one as well. Let's keep rolling. I skipped ahead by mistake. This was the second tough finale. Ryan Loder up against Robert Valentin. This was the middleweight fight. Now, I'm going to be coping hard for this fight because I really wanted to see Robert Valentin win. Since I did watch all the Ultimate Fighter this season, so I watched all the episodes, and he was my favorite middleweight coming out of the Tough House this season, and I was really hoping that he would win and get that contract. I still do think the UFC signs him, but he's just such a violent guy, and he just wants to come in and finish fights, and that's what I love. I love seeing that in a fighter. I'd rather see that than people that try to just like edge out decisions and just get themselves wins. And even though Ryan Loder did get that finish, that is kind of Ryan Loder's style. Regardless, Ryan Loder's that All-American wrestling really came through for him this weekend. He's super strong. He basically just forced Robert down to the ground. And even though Robert tried to do some rolls and all this stuff to get out of it, Ryan Loder his wrestling was too good. He's too strong, and he wasn't really allowing Valentin to get up back to his feet. There was a sequence in the first round where they were scrambling, and I think this might have been the reason for Valentin's loss. And like I said, I am coping a little bit, but Ryan Loder had Valentin's arm trapped between his legs during one of the things, and the way he was getting twisted around, I don't know if he like broke his arm maybe, or it was insane to watch how that arm was twisting. He ended up getting out of it. He almost choked out Ryan Loder twice in that first round, but ultimately he wasn't able to get that submission. Round two, more of the same. Ryan Loder grabs a hold of him, tries to get him down to the ground. Robert Valentin does a roll trying to get out of it, but Loder holds him down, gets him into a crucifix, and that was the end of that. He landed a ton of elbows, even though they didn't really look like they were doing much. And like I said, I might be coping a little bit, but they ended up stopping the fight, which you can't really argue for, because what are you going to do? There was 3 minutes left in the fight. You're just going to let this guy get absolutely mauled by elbows for the next 3 minutes in a crucifix position that he can't get out of? So I'm not completely upset about the stoppage. I'm upset about the result of this fight. Regardless, I still do think we see Robert Valentin come back. We had him in this fight. Ryan Loder gets it done. Congrats to him, but I would have much rather seen a young, hungry 29-year-old, a younger fighter, I should say, 29-year-old, violent, dangerous fighter rather than a 33-year-old All-American wrestler get a contract. Regardless, man, good for Ryan Loder. Let's keep rolling to the co-main event. It was Tabitha Ricci against Angela Hill. Now, this is another fight that people are on Twitter screaming, robbery this, robbery that. And it's like, I don't think, like, I disagree. I think Ricci won that fight. And the 29-28 was perfect. As I'm seeing here, two of the judges had rounds 1 and 2 for Tabitha, and one of the judges had round 2 and 3 for Tabitha. And I just think that was the right decision. It wasn't like people are saying, oh, Angela Hill will beat her, all this stuff, blah, blah. Angela Hill and Tabitha Ricci were slugging it out. Both were landing some great shots. Both had fantastic pace, fantastic pressure, great volume as well. But I think the glaring differences was that Tabitha Ricci was mixing in the martial arts. She was getting some takedowns. She was clinching up against the fence. And she was doing, if you're going to be tied basically on the feet, and you're doing other things, like how do you not score it for the other fighter? It's not like Angela Hill landed these huge shots that had Ricci stumbling around and all this stuff and hurting her. It was a good back and forth. If Ricci did not mix in any takedowns, didn't mix in any clinching, I could understand this being an Angela Hill fight or a split decision of some sort. But because it was so equal on the feet, because both ladies were pushing the pace, landing on each other, and the only difference in the fights was that Ricci was doing other stuff. She was clinching, wrestling. She was just doing more. She was keeping up on the feet and doing more. So I don't understand how people are like, oh, Angela Hill won. I disagree. Regardless, we had Tabitha Ricci, and I'm stoked about that because she got it done. I would much rather see an up-and-comer like Tabitha Ricci continue climbing than a 39-year-old Angela Hill who was way past her days. She is still looking good for a 39-year-old fighter. Like the cardio's there, the volume is there. It's great. I'm sure she has a lot of fights left, but she had her time. It's nice to see Tabitha Ricci get it done. Everybody can sulk all they want, like I was in the Robert Valentin and Loder fight, but Ricci got it done. Let's go on to the main event, and what a main event it was. Jared Cannonier took on the up-and-coming fighting nerds leader Caio Borralho, and Caio gets it done by unanimous decision. And just absolutely, like, it was incredible. It was a fantastic fight from start to finish. Both guys were landing big on each other. There was moments for both of them throughout this fight. And one thing that shocked me in this fight was that Caio didn't wrestle. This guy came in and stood with the killer gorilla. The threat of power on the Jared Cannonier side did not deter Borralho from just sitting there and trading shots with him the whole fight. It was incredible. It was great to see that evolution of Borralho's game because he was known as a grappler, and he even said it at the end of his post-fight interview in the octagon. I'm not just a grappler. And boy, is he not just a grappler. This guy is a full-blown mixed martial artist. I've followed his entire UFC career, and I am so excited to see his success. Him and the Fighting Nerds are just taking over right now, and it was amazing. This was a back-and-forth affair, and it was just a super fun fight. I urge you guys to go on to UFC Fight Pass if you have it and watch this fight if you didn't, because it was a banger from start to finish. 25 full minutes of action. It was great. Borralho did a fantastic job with that jab. Even though Cannonier had the longer reach in this fight, Borralho was landing a stiff jab throughout that whole fight. The leg kicks were money for him as well. And those were in my opinion, were his best two weapons throughout this fight. The most notable moment in that fight was in the 5th round. I believe there was like a minute left. Borralho lands a nice straight punch that puts Cannonier, just wobbles him. It was like my cousin said it. He was like, it was like a Shane Burgos moment against Barbosa. Maybe not as delayed, but it was like he shook him and then he just kind of fell after he got hit. It was incredible. The fact that Borralho showed he has power in the 5th round after I'm pretty sure this is his first main event. It's his first 5th round fight, and that the fact that he took that power with him after fighting for 24 minutes and almost put Cannonier away, great showing. We got to see a lot out of Borralho. We got to see his heart in this fight, his cardio, his ability to stay poised under pressure. He had the first UFC main event going up against a powerhouse like Cannonier. It was great, fantastic. The only beef that I have is with the scorecards again. And I think Borralho won this fight. That's not my issue. I had Borralho. I thought he won. I don't think you can score this fight for Jared Cannonier, but I thought it was more of a 48-47 kind of fight where it was 2-2 going into the fifth and then Borralho got it done. That was where my head was at. The scorecards that I read were insane. You could maybe say it was 4-1. I'll be okay with that because the rounds, some of the rounds are really close, especially the two, I believe it was 2, 3, and 4, all so close. But all three judges gave a 10-8 to Borralho in the fifth. That's kind of insane because even though he did have Cannonier on, like almost finished him, Cannonier was still landing. He was still active, still fighting. 10-8 is an absolute shit kicking. And like I said, even though Borralho put Cannonier on his ass and almost got him out of there, just a unanimous 10-8 round for something that we see. Like, it's crazy. It's just crazy to me. But all three judges gave a 10-8 to Caio. Okay? Two of the judges had Borralho winning every round but number 2. So they ended up with a 49-45 scorecard. And the other judge had it where I thought it was 2-2 going into the fifth. But then he gave Caio a 10-8 in the fifth. So I don't know about that. I do think the rightful winner won tonight. And even though we had some sketchy ass scorecards tonight, I think every fighter rightfully won that should have. So it becomes more of an issue when the scorecards are wild and then the wrong fighter wins. But I think despite the weird scorecards, the judges for the most part did okay. They got at the end of the day, the right person won, and that's all that matters, I guess. So yeah, like I said, we ended up going 7-4 on fights. There was 12 fights scheduled, but the Nathan Fletcher and Gigamontis Ramashka fight was canceled just before the event. I think there was a medical issue on the Nathan Fletcher side, so that will be postponed. I'll be excited for that matchup when it comes. But regardless, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Make sure you like the video, drop a comment down below on what you thought about this event, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I will see you later.